Welcome to Gross Things of Earth, the series where I talk about gross things that exist from around the world over gameplay of retro video games. You may learn something from this video, or it might just make you feel sick. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Today we are going to be covering the controversial trend of family vlogging and the potentially adverse effects it could have on children. For all of the great things that the internet has provided us over the years, from the hundreds of years worth of information and media we now have access to, as well as the large-scale connection we all now share with each other, the internet also has its fair share of shortcomings, from toxicity on social media to the fact that anyone you share the web with could potentially easily get a hold of your personal info, or the fact that around every corner could be a scammer trying to steal your personal details or your money. It's safe to say that the internet can potentially be a very dangerous place at the best of times for every single one of us. And that's just the case if you're an adult. For children, the dangers of the internet are exponentially larger. Kids are at risk of experiencing every issue previously mentioned, but are also at risk of being indoctrinated, manipulated, and harmed by degenerates and deviants who invade the platforms designed specifically for the younger internet users. Numerous child psychologists and child safety experts have made the effects of the internet on young minds more than obvious, as in most cases, overexposure to the online landscape from a young age can lead to mental health struggles and other major issues. Outside of the child-friendly platforms created specifically for kids online, it can be a dangerous world that most kids are educated on from a young age. With all of the facts and research that has been done into the potentially major side effects and issues that can be caused by the internet on a young, malleable mind, it's left many people baffled that the genre of family vlog channels can still exist and be so prominent. In concept, family vlogging sounds harmless, a happy family capturing moments in their life that they can relive in the future. In a way, it's no different to the grainy home movies and photo albums that many families keep in a safe place to occasionally pull out and have a browse within. But when you get to the upper echelon of this massive genre, it quickly becomes obvious why so many people are put off by the strange content. There's an online article written about the popularity of family vlogging titled "Family Vlogging Blurs the Line Between Family Member and Employee," a title that perfectly encapsulates the primary issue that many have with the genre. In many cases, the biggest issue that many have with these videos is that the children, sometimes being as young as toddlers and babies, are seen more as props in the content creation process than actual people, who are required to play out their role in the content and always be around to feature in it, like they're a character in a cheesy 80s sitcom. Imagine being a young kid who's just trying to figure things out about life, having almost all of the most important moments of your development captured so that random people can watch it and make your parents money. Most kids are incapable of understanding the world around them from such a young age, so imagine how hard it would be to understand when so much of your life is dictated by the camera and what you're being told you need to do to succeed from such a young age. Waking up in the morning with a camera in your face, not understanding why someone's taking a photo of you to use in the thumbnail of a video. The commodification of children in family vlogs is one thing, and we definitely will get back to it. But what about the fact that many family vlog channels often document the entire process of having their children, almost as if they are completely aware that having a new kid will be a financial boon for them? I'm not at all trying to claim that these vlog channels only have kids because they see them as another prop to profit off of, but in a lot of cases it can be pretty difficult to tell that that's not the case. Everything from the process they take to choose the child's name, all the way through to capturing the child's first moments on Earth, minutes or even seconds after it's come out of the womb, Also that the audience of randoms can see every waking second of the child's life. It's definitely weird and perfectly illustrates how little privacy means to these channels. Imagine growing up and knowing that almost every day of every week of your life, from fetus to teenager, could have potentially been documented for your parents' sycophantic fan base. The moment you open your eyes and see what's around you for the first time, you see a DSLR camera staring back at you before you see your own father's face. The worst thing about this is that whenever any family channel tends to get criticism from the wider internet community because what they're doing can be seen as exploitative or removing a child's autonomy from a very young age, it's almost always the same response. Well, the only reason we do it is because our child loves to do it. The only reason we partake in it is because they were the ones that wanted to do it. Well, sure, that could be the case if your child is like 12 or 13 or 14 or so, but some of these channels start and focus on children who are so young they wouldn't even have a concept of what is going on around them. They're only really being driven to do this because it's just what life is for them. They don't comprehend the experiences that are being built in their life. They don't comprehend how in the future this could possibly have an effect on how they develop. Imagine a child who's being recorded and filmed daily since they're born, and then in later years have to try and understand what life without constantly being in front of the camera, pantomiming their life as their parents want them to, and how they want their life to be portrayed. Imagine how rough it would be for them to understand how it's not a normal thing to be in the position that these children are in. Imagine how tough it will be for them when they realise it's actually abnormal and their life is a completely different experience to their peers. Let's also look at it from another perspective. Many of these channels claim to be vlogging their everyday lives, but in reality they also want to portray themselves in a very specific way. I use the description of these channels being similar to a corny 80s sitcom, but that's honestly not too far from the truth. There is no shortage of family vlog channels that want to come off as the rosy, saccharine sweet ideal of perfection that many people wish for in their families. But that's simply not reality most of the time. Real people have problems, and that also goes for children. I don't know for sure, but I would say that these kids are probably being told from a young age to act a certain way, almost as if they're being influenced when they're at their most malleable in development to be a character. And as for a kid, that not only has to be extremely exhausting, but also very claustrophobic mentally. Imagine being expected to pantomime a fairy floss happy family every day, even when you don't feel it. For an adult, that might be fine because they have ways to actively work with their feelings. They have outlets they can channel it into. But for a kid, it must be significantly harder not knowing how to manage these emotional feelings. Being told that this is what you have to do just because that's what you got to do to succeed. What's worse is that if you do have an issue or something that might be getting to you as a child in these households, there's a good chance that that issue will be turned into content. Family channels of many different kinds have come under fire for broadcasting moments of children being vulnerable, sad, or in situations that should be kept private. I think privacy is a prime point of contention that many who disagree with these channels also have an issue with. But back to the commodification of the children. If the lack of privacy wasn't enough, how about the fact that some family channels have done things like sold baby photos of their newly born children for money, and even sold life-sized, anatomically correct dolls and figurines of their newly born children, and even toddlers, for thousands of dollars, complete with fake birth documents to make the questionable purchase even more strange. Also that a weird cat lady or an old creepy degenerate can do God knows what with it. Because there is no way that a kid could ever pay the high asking price for these strange items. While it might not have been their first thought when their new baby was being born to sell this kind of memorabilia, the fact that they decided to do it in the first place is very strange and quite telling. If all of this wasn't enough, there have been quite a few high-profile cases where family channels have gone far beyond just being questionable into the territory of legitimate abuse and harm to their own kids. While these channels and families are the outliers in a community where a majority of them are just questionable at least and disagreeable at worst, the levels of abuse and harm that they have perpetuated has led to the entire genre being heavily scrutinised. Daddy05 was a family channel that focused more on pranks within the family, along with the usual vlog-style content that has become commonplace. However, these so-called pranks were far more disgusting and abusive than many would expect. Martin, the patriarch of the family, would frequently stand on the periphery with his wife, filming as the kids would get into physical fights that would include choking and kicking each other in the nether regions. He would record himself pushing the youngest member of the family into furniture on occasions, and would encourage his kids to hit each other during games that were obviously designed to facilitate fights between the children. The two youngest kids in the household would find themselves at the centre of the abuse, as they would have their things randomly smashed in front of them, and some of the most cruel jokes would be pulled on them, like leaving the youngest boy in public alone until he cried on camera, or screaming at him for something that they had orchestrated in order to make him cry. They would also reveal very personal information about his life, such as his history with self-harm, and other facets of his life that they would use to embarrass him in front of their large audience. On one video, they even made him cry by telling him that they were putting him up for adoption, with the mum saying that the reason why was because they loved him because they had to, but that they didn't like him because he was a bad kid. The internet community tried tirelessly to ruin the family's career and reputation, which didn't take much effort due to the fact that they had willingly posted this content publicly. But this is just one example of many. What about the case of the TikTok rabbi who would go on to sexually abuse his own adopted children? While on the surface he seemed like an exemplary individual who had done good by his adopted kids, giving them a healthy family life and a place in the world, behind closed doors he would force his young children into degenerate sexual situations of abuse, and would continue this until one of the boys spread the word of the heinous acts being committed by calling into a podcast where he would tell the tale of his and his brother's abuse. It would later be revealed that the father was almost entirely lying about his identity, and he had also at some point in the past been out on bond after an alleged sexual misconduct case with another child. And of course, the most prominent, but definitely not the last case of mistreatment of children stemming from these forms of content, the 8 passengers abuse. This case is slightly different from other family channels because unlike those, where the point is effectively to portray their life as perfect and great, the 8 Passengers channel was seemingly more dedicated to the matriarch of the family, enriching the audience with her parenting style, which was far more traditional and old school than her peers, espousing concepts like responsibility and not allowing kids to dictate one's parenting style, ideals that aren't necessarily bad when moderated, but can quickly become harsh and dictatorial if not reeled in. While she had shown the ability to take time with her children, she would find herself in the crosshairs of online criticism many times for her perceived parental shortcomings due to her almost exaggeratedly harsh punishments and almost comically militant views and responses to criticism. She would grow and find a niche of viewers which would watch along as she worked to raise her children, but none of them could have known that she would go on to face criminal charges in the future. The mother, along with another woman who had become a frequent business partner to her, would be arrested on August the 30th of 2023 for committing disgusting acts of physical and mental abuse onto two of the family's children, after one of the children had managed to escape the captivity of the household and go to a neighbouring house where he would ask for water and food. The child looking emaciated and being covered in wounds, as well as also having duct tape wrapped tightly around his arms, would lead to the worried onlookers calling the police, where they found the extent of the horrid abuse continued far beyond what they originally imagined. Another child had been involved, and while police searched and began to uncover more of the horrific circumstances, it quickly became clear that this was a person who had taken the ideals of traditional parenting and used it to create a toxic and abusive environment where she was right and she would injure and abuse anyone that disagreed. The mother would go on to be sentenced to between 4 and 30 years in prison. Family vlogging will never not be a controversial genre in the online landscape. With the preset ideals and criticisms that many have with the content, and the type of people who frequently choose to create its content within the genre, it will never truly go away either. I don't personally think it's impossible to make a family vlog content without it negatively affecting young people, but with the amount of money, views, and business opportunities that it can provide to families that follow the formula, I doubt many will ever go against the grain.